operating on certain fundamental assumptions, certain beliefs about the nature of things that seem so obvious, so self-evident, that we never think to question them. And yet, when awakening occurs, when you truly see through the veil of conditioned perception, these assumptions reveal themselves to be precisely what they are: illusions. Not lies, exactly, but constructions, useful fictions, that we've mistaken for absolute truth. Today, I want to talk about 8 of these illusions. 8 fundamental misperceptions that dissolve when consciousness recognizes itself. And I say dissolve rather than are destroyed, because that's closer to what actually happens. They don't shatter dramatically. They simply fade away, like mist in the morning sun, revealing what was always there beneath them. Let's begin with the most fundamental illusion of all, the one upon which all the others rest. This is the illusion that you are separate from everything else, that there is you in here and the world out there, and between these two there is a real boundary, a genuine division. Now, intellectually, most people can understand that this isn't quite true. We know about ecology, about interconnection, about how everything affects everything else. We can talk about how the oxygen you're breathing was produced by trees, how the atoms in your body were forged in the hearts of stars. We can understand the concept of interdependence, but understanding it conceptually is not the same as seeing through the illusion. Because what awakening reveals is not just that everything is interconnected, but that the division itself is fictitious. There is no separate you to be connected to everything else. The connection isn't a relationship between two things. It's an identity. You are the whole process, temporarily experiencing itself as a particular point of view. Think about it this way. Your body doesn't stop at your skin. Right now, you're exchanging molecules with the air around you with every breath. The food you ate yesterday is literally becoming you today. The boundary between inside and outside is completely arbitrary. We draw it at the skin because that's convenient, but we could just as easily draw it at the edge of the solar system. After all, without the sun, you wouldn't be here at all. When this illusion of separation dissolves, you don't gain some new mystical perception. Rather, you lose an old illusion. You see that what you took to be an isolated entity has always been a wave in an ocean, a note in a symphony, a word in a story. The wave was never separate from the ocean. How could it be? It's made of ocean. It moves with ocean. It is ocean, temporarily expressing itself in this particular form. And when you see this, really see it, not as a concept, but as direct perception, your entire relationship with existence changes. You're no longer defending a small territory against a hostile universe. You're the universe, experiencing itself from this particular angle. The distinction between self and other begins to blur, not because you've achieved some elevated state, but because you've stopped believing in a division that was never really there. The second illusion follows naturally from the first. If you believe you're separate, then naturally you believe you have control, that you're the author of your actions, the master of your fate. This is what we call free will, and it's one of the most convincing illusions we maintain. Now, before you protest, I'm not arguing for pure determinism. That would just be replacing one illusion with another. What I'm pointing at is more subtle. The question isn't whether your choices are free or determined. The question is, who is doing the choosing? Watch your own mind for a moment. Where do your thoughts come from? Did you decide what thought to think next, or did it simply arise? You might say, well, I decided to listen to you, so I must have some control. But did you decide to decide? Where did that decision come from? If you trace it back far enough, you find that decisions arise from conditions you didn't choose. Your genetics, your upbringing, your circumstances, the state of your neurotransmitters in this particular moment. The awakened person sees that what we call me is not the controller, but the process itself. You're not in your body the way a driver is in a car. You are what your body is doing. The sense of being a separate controller, an ego sitting behind your eyes, pulling the levers, is a construction, a useful fiction that evolution developed because organisms that believe they're in control try harder to survive. But here's the paradox. When the illusion of control dissolves, you don't become passive. You don't stop making decisions. You don't stop taking action. What changes is the sense of burden, the weight of responsibility for being the author of everything. Things still happen. Choices still get made. But there's no longer this separate you carrying the entire universe on your shoulders. It's like this. Imagine you're watching a river flow. The river doesn't need to control its flowing. It doesn't worry about whether it's flowing correctly. It simply flows according to its nature and the conditions it encounters. When the illusion of control drops away, you realize you're like that. You're not controlling your life. You are your life, happening according to its nature. And paradoxically, when you stop trying to control everything, when you stop forcing and pushing and manipulating, things often flow more smoothly. Not because you've gained some magical power, but because you've stopped interfering with the natural intelligence of the process. Now we come to one of the most pervasive illusions, the idea that time is a line stretching from past through present into future, and that we're progressing along this line toward something better, toward completion, toward arrival. This is the illusion that keeps you perpetually dissatisfied with the present moment. You're always preparing, always working toward, always becoming. I'll be happy when I get the job, when I find the relationship, when I achieve the goal. But of course, when you arrive at any particular point, the present moment is still here, and if you're not at home in the present moment, you won't be at home anywhere. The awakened person sees that time is not a line, but a dimension of the eternal now. Yes, there are sequences, events, following one another, but these are all occurring within this present moment. The past exists only as memory, which is a present experience. The future exists only as anticipation or imagination, which is also a present experience. The only thing that's ever actually here is now. This doesn't mean you don't plan or remember. It means you recognize that planning and remembering are things you're doing now. You're not really going anywhere. You're always here. And here is always now. There is nowhere else to be and no other time to be in. When this illusion drops, you stop postponing your life. You stop waiting for the right conditions, the right moment, the right circumstances. You recognize that this is it. This moment, exactly as it is the only moment you'll ever have. Not in some tragic sense, but in a liberating sense. You're already at the destination. You've always been at the destination. There's nowhere else to arrive. And this is when life becomes vivid, immediate, full, because you're no longer half present, with one foot in the past, regretting, or one foot in the future, worrying. You are fully here, fully alive, fully engaged with what is. The fourth illusion is perhaps the most painful one, the illusion that things should be other than they are. This is the fundamental posture of resistance, of arguing with reality, of believing that what is happening shouldn't be happening. Now, I'm not talking about passivity or resignation. I'm talking about something much more subtle. There's a difference between accepting what is and not taking action to change things. You can fully accept that it's raining while simultaneously deciding to build shelter. The acceptance is of the fact, not of remaining forever in the rain. But most people don't do this. They spend enormous amounts of energy resisting what already is. This shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't feel this way. They shouldn't have done that. The world shouldn't be like this. And all of this resistance creates suffering because you're trying to fight with something that's already happened, that's already here. When you awaken, you see the futility of this. You realize that reality is always exactly as it is, and it couldn't be otherwise in this moment. given all the conditions that led to it. This doesn't mean you like everything. It doesn't mean you don't work to change things. It means you start from acceptance of what is, rather than from resistance. It's like this. Imagine you are swimming in a river and you encounter a large rock. You can spend your energy being angry that the rock is there, insisting that it shouldn't be there, fighting against its presence, or you can acknowledge that it is there and swim around it. Same action, completely different relationship to reality. The awakened person swims around the rock. They don't waste energy arguing with facts. They see what is, they accept what is, and they respond appropriately. And in this, there's a tremendous freedom, because you're no longer exhausting yourself in futile battles with reality itself. The fifth illusion is that you are your thoughts. This is a tricky one because it's so deeply embedded in our sense of identity. We think we are the thinker, that the voice in our head is us, that our thoughts define who we are. But if you observe carefully, you'll notice something strange. Thoughts appear in your awareness. You don't create them through some act of will. They arise, they exist for a moment, and they pass away. If you were your thoughts, who is it that's aware of them? Who is observing the thinking? The awakened person recognizes that they are not their thoughts, but the space in which thoughts arise. You're the awareness, the consciousness, the open presence within which thinking occurs. Thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky. The sky doesn't become the clouds. It simply allows them to pass through. When you see this, you gain tremendous freedom. You're no longer tyrannized by your thinking. You don't have to believe every thought that arises. You don't have to take your mental commentary as truth. You can observe thoughts arising, notice them, and let them pass without getting caught up in them. This doesn't mean thinking stops. It means thinking is recognized for what it is, a tool, a process, something that happens, not something that you are. And when you're not identified with your thoughts, you can use thinking when it's useful and rest from it when it's not. You're no longer compulsively thinking, trying to figure everything out, trying to mentally control your experience. The sixth illusion is that happiness comes from external circumstances. We all know this intellectually, but we don't live as if we know it. We still believe that if we just get the right job, the right partner, the right amount of money, the right living situation, then we'll be happy. We're perpetually chasing conditions, thinking that happiness is somewhere out there, waiting for us to arrange things correctly. But when awakening happens, you realize that happiness is not a feeling that comes from circumstances. It's your natural state when you're not resisting what is. It's what's here when you stop arguing with reality, when you stop insisting that things should be different, when you stop postponing your fulfillment. Think about it. When have you been truly happy? Not excited, not entertained, but deeply at peace. It's usually been in moments when you weren't wanting anything else. Maybe you were watching a sunset, or playing with a child, or completely absorbed in some activity. In those moments, the wanting mind was quiet. You were simply present, simply here, and that presence itself was fulfilling. This is your natural state. Happiness is not something you achieve or acquire. It's what remains when you stop disturbing yourself with craving and aversion, with wanting things to be other than they are. It's always been here, underneath all the agitation, all the seeking, all the struggle. When you see this, you stop making happiness conditional. You stop saying, I'll be happy when. You recognize that you can be at peace now, regardless of circumstances. Not because you've achieved some superhuman state, but because you've stopped doing the thing that was preventing peace. You've stopped fighting with what is. The seventh illusion is that you know what things mean. We're constantly interpreting, constantly assigning meaning to events, constantly telling ourselves stories about what's happening and why it's happening. And we take these interpretations to be truth. We don't realize we're making it all up. Something happens, and immediately the mind says, this is good, or this is bad. Someone treats you a certain way, and the mind says, this means they don't like me, or this means I'm not good enough. You fail at something, and the mind says, this means I'm a failure. These interpretations seem like simple observations of fact, but they're not. They're stories, meanings you're imposing on events that are, in themselves, meaningless. When you awaken, you see that life doesn't come with built-in meaning. You're the one creating it, then forgetting you did, and treating it as truth. A rainy day isn't bad. That's your story. Losing a job isn't a disaster. That's your interpretation. Someone's behavior doesn't define you. That's your projection. This isn't to say nothing matters. It means once you see that meaning is created, not discovered, you're free to create wiser meanings, to tell stories that serve you instead of imprison you. And sometimes the most freeing act is to simply not know what things mean, to let them be as they are. This not knowing isn't ignorance, it's wisdom. The recognition that reality is always richer and more mysterious than any story you tell about it. The final illusion is that enlightenment is something special, reserved for special people, some extraordinary event that turns you into someone else. But awakening isn't an achievement, it's a recognition. You're not becoming something new, you're realizing what you've always been, already awake, already whole. The very search for enlightenment is what hides it like a wave searching for the ocean, never realizing it is the ocean. When this illusion dissolves, the search ends, not because you've found something, but because you see you were never lost. The journey was imaginary. The destination was always under your feet. Enlightenment isn't extraordinary, it's utterly ordinary. It's the falling away of the belief in separation, the end of the idea that you are something apart, seeking what you lack. What remains is simple, immediate, obvious. You are this moment, this awareness. You might say, but I don't feel enlightened. Of course not. These illusions are deeply conditioned. They've been reinforced your entire life. Yet when you see through even one illusion, it begins to weaken the others, because they depend on each other. The illusion of separation supports the illusion of control, which supports the illusion of time, and so on. You don't need to dismantle them all, just see one clearly, and the rest begin to fade. This isn't a process of becoming someone new, but of seeing through who you thought you were. Enlightenment isn't an addition, it's a subtraction. You're not gaining something, you're losing illusion. What remains is what was always here, the undeniable presence that you are and always have been. The Buddha called it awakening, Jesus called it being born again, the Taoists called it returning to the source. All words pointing to the same thing, the recognition of the reality that was always here. And you don't need to believe this. You can see for yourself. Look at your own experience. Question what you take for granted. Observe whether happiness truly comes from circumstances or from your relationship with them. Notice whether you're your thoughts or the awareness behind them. Awakening isn't escape from life, but fuller participation in it. Not transcendence, but acceptance. Not becoming something else, but realizing what you already are. It's available now, not as a future goal, but as present recognition. These illusions can be seen through now. If you're willing to look, when you do, you find what you were seeking has always been here. The 8 illusions aren't enemies, they're misunderstandings. They dissolve not through struggle, but through seeing. So look, question, investigate not to believe, but to see. For truth can't be given, only discovered. And when you see it, you realize you were never the limited self you